You're listening to the InFocus Interview Show, brought to you by Photofocus.com, an online publication filled with education and inspiration for visual storytellers. This episode is made possible by our partners: LoomCube, the world's most versatile light, and Drobo, a smart storage solution. Now here's your host, Vanelli.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vanelli. Now, my guest is an internationally renowned commercial, people, and children photographer based in his beloved New York City. His creative problem solving and helped promote products and services for many companies such as Toys R Us, the Wall Street, Kodak, and many more. He's had several Time magazine covers. Please welcome Jack Reznicki. Hello, Jack.
Hi, Vanelli. How you doing? I'm glad you mentioned companies that I work for that I now drove out of business, like Kodak and Toys R Us.
Now, Jack, can you explain the difference between an attorney and a litigator, and why it's important to choose a reputable litigator?
And this goes not just for copyright cases. This also goes for things like personal injury or other things. You want to know if the lawyer you're talking to is a litigator, because litigators are the ones that go into court. There's a lot of lawyers who never go to court. They're not litigators. And so if you have a personal injury case and you actually get a lawyer who we call a door lawyer. Door lawyer is they'll take any case that comes through the door, but they don't litigate. And we know I know one personal injury lawyer. She specializes in litigating for other lawyers, because what happens is you give all the information to your lawyer. He goes over it, and then he'll tell you, by the way, we have to bring in a specialist for this because your case is going to require this in court. What he's not telling you is, I can't go into court. I don't know the procedures. You have to be a litigator to do that. So that's real important. And we emphasize it's important to do research. In fact, Ed Greenberg and I have a blog where we have a lot of information. We run it irregularly. So whenever we have a topic or we can do it, sometimes we might have one a week. Sometimes we might have one every 2 or 3 months. The last blog piece we put up was talking about hiring lawyers and being careful to get good recommendations, because there are some lawyers out there who are litigators who are terrible. There's one in particular out there right now who claims that he puts in files more copyright cases than any other law firm. And it's true. And the courts are sanctioning him because he doesn't know what he's doing. They're saying there's no way you can adequately litigate or represent that many clients. And it's hilarious.
Right? I mean, that's dangerous.
It's a long story of what this one particular lawyer is doing. If you copyright a copyright troll lawyer, his name will come up. It'll be very obvious. But you should do that for any lawyer you're hiring. You want to find somebody local to you. And even Ed Greenberg, some people saying, well, Ed's trying to get work. Ed tells everybody, he says, where are you located? It's San Francisco. I can give you a recommendation, but you need to get somebody in California. And he does that a lot. You need to have a local lawyer at all possible. And you need to have a lawyer who's an intellectual property lawyer, an IP lawyer. You don't look for a mechanic for your airplane under mechanic. Maybe he can fix your Volvo or your Toyota. Doesn't mean he can fix your plane. They're both mechanics. The one I like, because this actually happened to us with somebody who once at a breakfast somewhere with somebody we just met, her new boyfriend, said he was a conductor, and immediately we were impressed, thinking, wow, conductor in front of an orchestra. And then he finished the rest of the sentence, on the Long Island Railroad. Well, yeah, he's a conductor, and the other one's a conductor too. It's the same thing with lawyers. You need to do research, and we recommend that's something you can ask online about with other photographers. Have you had somebody you're happy with? Have you been successful pursuing an infringement case with a lawyer? That type of thing is fine. Don't discuss what your case is or how you've been infringed, but asking for that kind of help from the community on social media is not a bad thing to do. And if you can't get a good recommendation near where you are, the other thing we recommend, which we think is a great suggestion, is find a local law school near you and give them a call. Ask for who teaches intellectual property, and ask that instructor who he would recommend. We find that's better than calling the local bar association. The problem with calling a local bar association, they might give you somebody who may not have a lot of experience but needs the work. They're going to try and bring it over to somebody who actually needs it. But we do talk in our column too that at this point, because of what's going on with the quarantine and digital, we think it's only affected photographers, but it's heavily affected the law industry, where a lot of young lawyers out of law school, the work that they used to do by hand are now being done by computers and digitally, looking up cases and things. There's a lot of lawyers looking for work, and you have to be careful. There's some really, really good lawyers who give you really good advice, and there's some really bad lawyers out there, which we all know. I mean, what's
Okay, so Jack, with that, what in some of the cases you've heard, what's the worst case scenario? Let's say I get a bad litigator, he goes in, and I have an airtight. Everyone knows this is my image. What could go wrong?
He doesn't file correctly. This litigator I'm talking about just had a few days ago. The court said this was a decent in Illinois, federal court in Illinois, and they said he just didn't follow procedures. He didn't follow federal procedures. He didn't follow local procedures, and they basically not only threw the case out, they made the photographer pay $20,000 to the other side for their legal fees, of which a photographer had to pay $10,000, and this lawyer was sanctioned $10,000. This is an extreme case. I have not heard. This is all the same lawyer I'm talking about. He's been sanctioned several times by the courts, and the judges have called him a copyright troll in court, which is very unusual to hear from a federal judge. But it's you got to do your research. You can get burned. What these lawyers also do, which is what happens. One of the reasons a lawyer like that, and there's several like that, will file so many cases is that he's forcing the other side to settle. That's what he's looking for. He's not looking to go to court. Court takes up time. What he's hoping for is a quick settlement. And what happens is you find out later, if you go to a reputable lawyer, that your case could have been worth $30, $50, $75, even $100,000, let's say. Let's say it's worth $30,000. What's going to happen is he's going to settle for $2,000 to $5,000 on his case, because then there's no work for him. So he makes more money. He makes more money if he can get quick settlements, and that's what some lawyers do. They look for a quick settlement, and so they file, because when you file a federal lawsuit, that's a very serious thing. The other side has to get a lawyer. They have to answer it properly and follow procedures. So this lawyer, quite frankly, we think just doesn't have. It seems like he doesn't have the experience because he keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. So this is the way a lawyer can screw up your case. Is we've seen photographers saying, "Oh, this was great. I had this picture infringed, and my lawyer got me, because he's going to take 50%, got me $1,500, $2,000. I'm so happy. $2,000 just fell in my lap." And then you find out later from somebody else that they would have settled for $50,000. And you would have gotten, and they don't charge 50%. They're charging a lawyer normally in cases like this, except in extreme cases, would charge 30 to 35% of the net amount. So you're talking about which brings up another good subject I'd love to get into. So you're talking about you're giving up 25 or 30,000 in your pocket or more, as opposed to just getting 2,000. Now, are you happy about that? That's a different story. The other thing we talk about too is they have these search firms that'll do searches on the internet for you. If and I'll mention the name of one of them, and there's several of them, and all of them seem to be based out of Germany. But there's one called Pixie. Now, if you read Pixie's the little fine print on their use agreement, if they find an infringement, you have to give them 50% of the settlement. That doesn't count you hiring a lawyer. And they say, "Oh, we'll hire a lawyer for you." There was one case. And I can't remember the name of the. I'm trying to remember the name of the suit, but it made headlines all over social media because the judge ruled that the company was able to take this image off the internet, and that was fair use. And everybody went absolutely nuts. And Ed and I read the actual court papers, and we saw Pixie hired the lawyer. They hired a lawyer who didn't know what he was doing. And the judge even said in his ruling, he can only rule on the facts that are presented in front of him. That's the way a trial goes. And that's why you see sometimes lawyers saying outrageous things in the beginning, because if they don't bring up an argument in the beginning, it's considered abandoned. So if you don't bring that argument up, the judge can't rule on it, even if he knows that the ruling is going to be wrong. That's the way the court system works. The lawyers have to argue the facts, and if they don't present it, the judge can't rule on it. And in this case, the judge knew it was a BS ruling, and it went to appeals, and it was turned over. No big surprise to anybody. But we read the court papers, not the headlines in social media and the stories that was being written. And we found out that this was a pixel case, which really upset the judge too, because it turns out that Pixie's terms where they get 50%. The lawyer who stated in court that he gets 35%. That means whatever they would have ended up with, and I think in the end they got like $2,500 judgment, $2,500. The photographer, and we don't know if this is what happened, but according to the way all the papers read, he's entitled to 15%, 15, because 50% goes to Pixie, 35% was going to the lawyer. Now, Pixie's terms of use says if you use them and they find it, they get 50%, even if you hire your own lawyer. So there was somebody in social media, a couple, I forget their name too, who had something a while back saying, they sued and they ended up with this tiny amount. And they never said it. And first thing that went through my mind is I said, this was a Pixie case. And Pixie works on the same thing that this troll lawyer that I've been talking about does, which is they look for quick settlements. They use their in-house people, which actually is a little illegal because you're supposed to be using lawyers for some of the things that they're doing. They're trying to use in-house people to get quick settlements from people. And again, you're going to end up with money, but it may not be what you are really entitled to.
Well, here's in all the years you've been a photographer, how many infringements have you dealt with?
Me, two.
Now think how many years you've been a photographer. So some of these new photographers, it's like they're praying, excuse me, that somebody steals their image, and they're going to make millions and millions of dollars on that image, and it's like that's not going to happen. They're making it. They make it sound like once somebody steals one of your images, wow, you're set for life.
No, and litigating is not fun. Now, Ed, who's a lawyer, we did one workshop once. He asked everybody in the room, "Has anybody here sued anybody and gone to trial for anything?" Like 3 hands go up, and Ed looks at him and said, "And did you have fun?" No. It's not a fun process. Although I will tell you, both of my infringements got me 5-figure checks. I mean, it paid for my Prius that I drive in cash. It's yes, you can collect a lot. You're not set for life. Um, it's it depends on the case. There's certain cases that are worth a lot because of the way the image was used, um, and there's cases that aren't worth pursuing. I know Ed specifically. If it's a small case, he says you're not going to get anything after you pay me. He won't take a case like that. Um, he says it's not worth it. We've heard of some things happening like that, but you need to go somebody who litigates these types of things and knows about the range that a case like that would be worth. And quite honestly, it takes some research, even from an expert. If you walk into a lawyer's office and he tells you, "Oh, this case is worth $50,000" off the bat like that, turn around and find another lawyer because they really don't know. They have to do some research. Every case is based on its own facts and its own merits. Photographers like to take something they hear and apply it to everything. And it doesn't work that way in legal cases. Everything has its own set of facts, and
Exactly.
you really have to dive into it.
Now, Jack, it's so funny. A few summers ago, excuse me. I'm trying to think around the time. I remember it was in the summer because I was in the swimming pool, and I called you and I say, Jack, would you pay $3.5 million? Excuse me, for this photo of the Statue of Liberty? And what it was the U.S. Postal Service made a huge mistake. They downloaded a copy of
Yeah,
the Statue of Liberty from Las Vegas and not from Getty,
right.
and not the actual Statue of Liberty. And the court found that the artist was entitled to 3.5 million because of the amount of money they made. About the amount of money that the post office made off of that image.
Yeah,
Um,
that's actual damages.
yes, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
called you. Isn't that it's comical? I'm looking back at this because you were always my go-to guy. Whenever I saw something funny like this, I'd
yeah,
call you, and the first thing you would say is, like you just said just now, that's actual damages.
yeah.
Now, if we, yeah,
It's yeah, it's there's. I will tell you, most of the really big cases you did never hear about because they're settled, and they're settled. With non-disclosure agreements. So nobody knows what happened. There's one case that comes up all the time, which is Patrick Carreau versus Richard Prince. And it was these pictures of the Rastafarians. And if you read in the art magazines, and I've had lawyers say this too, um, that, well, Richard Prince, won that. And what happened is the lower court saw for Patrick Carreau, the photographer. Judge Bates killed Richard Prince, and it was going to be a fortune. He appealed to a higher court. The appellate court said, no, these images here are transformative, so that's a fair use. And people stop right there. What the court also said was, and these 5 images are infringements, and it's going back to Judge Bates, who just passed away a few months ago. Judge Batts will now determine the damages. Well, what happened after that is Richard Prince settled with Patrick Carreau. We don't know how that ended up. I will take a guess, and I'm going to think that I'm probably right, is that Richard Prince wrote a very large check to Patrick Carreau. But if you read this in the news stuff, people saying, "Oh, Richard Prince, got away with this." No, he got away with some of the images and not all of them. In fact, a lot of us wanted to see that case go to the Supreme Court because we didn't understand how the judges were suddenly art critics and were determining which
mm,
ones were transformative and which ones weren't. There's no clear line on that, and it's a very, very confusing area. And because they settled, it didn't go on to another court. Now, that's one of the rare cases where if it did, yes, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars to pursue this case. But this case was about millions of dollars. These images that Richard Prince reproduced and sold, he was selling for outrageous amounts of money, and it was into the millions of dollars.
Wow.
So cases like that happen, but there's other cases that are a lot simpler. I know. Ed had well, he can't talk about the case, and I don't know what happened either. But he's had cases where, like, a famous photographer who gets a lot of money for fine art photographs has one of his images put on a dress from like H&M or something, and that goes into a lot of money because of the way it was used. He's also sued a very popular play on Broadway because they use a photographer's photo for the backdrop of the play. It was a bar in Africa that no longer existed, and they used this photographer's picture of this iconic bar. In fact, they used it in other ways, to promote the play. This became like the logo of the play. So you never know how it's being used. It's not always on the internet. There's a lot of different types of infringements.
Wow. Hey, Jack, you're always a wealth of knowledge. That's why I love talking to you. Now, where can we find out more about you?
I'm not telling you. No. Well, it's these types of things. You can go to our blog, thecopyrightzone.com. One word, thecopyrightzone.com. And you can ask us questions there. You can also reach me on my my email, which is jack@photonews.com.
Thank you so much for your time. And once again, extremely informative.
My pleasure.
Let's just take a moment and thank our partners.
LumeCube. LumeCube is proudly known as the world's most versatile light. It's the smallest, lightest, most compact professional lighting solution on the market. LumeCube represents the future of LED lighting and is a must-have for anyone looking to create better photos and video. Check out the new LumeCube strobe, offering anti-collision lighting for drones at lumecube.com. Drobo. Drobo is a smart storage solution that protects photos, videos, and more from hard drive failure, giving peace of mind for the working pro or serious amateur who have a lot of external drives cluttering up their desktop. Save 10% at drobostore.com with the coupon code Photofocus.
Now, my guest is an award-winning photographer who has been sharing his knowledge and love for photography for close to 40 years. He is currently the new president of PPA. Please welcome Gregory Daniel. How you doing, Greg?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much. I can't believe that we have spent this much time in the same area and not seen each other before.
How is PPA helping its members during the quarantine period?
Well, yeah. I mean, for one, I would recommend, I'll talk about a few things here, but mainly I would say the takeaway here would be go to PPA, because PPA has go to ppa.com, because PPA has opened up a whole section of its website and information to everyone, whether you're a member or not a member, whether you're just a creative or not. You don't even have to be a photographer, and you can go to ppa.com/inittogether, and it'll come up with a centralized hub place where it's COVID everything, during this period of time. And so it has things like, it's opened up the portal to all this free education. We've opened up our website for all free education for you, and webinars and government assistance and all the news updates. So that page, if you'll go in there and take a look at that, it will really help you in all these different areas. I've put out on Facebook not too long ago, I put out a whole series about this, and a whole lot of folks other than photographers, lots of creatives and lots of other business owners saw that, have gone to these pages. I've received so many messages back thanking us, thanking PPA for this information, because it's applicable to all small businesses. I mean, so if you're struggling, looking into how to, deal with the PPPs, the Paycheck Protection Program, or, the quick assistance that you could get for grants. What we've created webinars. Our chief financial person put webinars in place so for us to take a look at and walk through this. So that's in that area. We're up at the Hill doing all kinds of copyright, protection for our creatives and not just photographers, right? It's creatives with art and film and painting and just all the creatives that are out there. We're trying to help with copyright. So we have a lot of connections up there. And so through those connections, we've been lobbying for greater relief packages for photographers and other small businesses. And one of the things that we heard early on were the crying help for wedding photographers because they were dealing with tons of cancellations, with contract cancellations. And so we put some information in here about how to navigate through those cancellations of the contracts. So that's a whole section of it in there. Let's see what other things. Certainly lots of webinars, and we actually are producing a series of webinars to help you during this period of time so that when you get through this really difficult time that we're having, you come out the other end running instead of thinking about what you're going to do afterwards. So during this period of time, I would encourage everybody to really sharpen that skill package. I know we talked earlier before the break about the difference between seeking out education just on tools like how to do a wrench better, right? Or how to use the screwdriver better, or how to swing a hammer better. Those are all great things that we have to do. And you can get lots of online videos to understand how to do those individual things. But to be able to have that toolbox and then use it for a purpose, that's a different world, right? That's a different thing. And that's the business side of it. Now that I have these tools I know how to use, how do I actually implement those tools, and which ones only make sense for what I'm really trying to do and accomplish from a business perspective? So I really encourage everybody to go in there and do that. And if you're a PPA member, we also just came out with a creation of an In It Together education voucher, which for this purpose, it's $30 if you are a PPA member, and you can apply it to entering print competition. You can apply that $30 towards that. You can apply it to any of the educational things, like we have affiliated programs that people teach in their studios throughout the year, and those classes you can use it for that. Anything that's educational related within PPA, you can use that $30 voucher. But lots and lots of stuff on that site. I would encourage everybody to go take a look at it.
Well, that's amazing. Because I knew you did it for your members. I didn't realize you opened it up to everybody. I mean, that's absolutely astounding. So I'll make sure we push that big time. And I like how you're giving photographers the information they need if they need to file government, relief for the relief programs, because a lot of them are just stuck. It's interesting how if you want to become a doctor, they make you take business classes. You still have to take a business class because they don't want doctors to be out of work or have poor business practices. Photographers need the same thing. They need to understand business, no matter how great we are as photographers. We have to make sure that we're running our business, and for you to supply stuff like that for everyone, not just your members, to have a place to look at and say, well, where can I find the relief program? What are things I can do to help me during this time? I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, it swings back. It just circles all the way back around to the beginning of this discussion, and how I went through college. I have a photography degree in college, and I really knew nothing about business. Even though I had a business class in college, I really didn't know really what business was all about until my first class through PPA, through the Traveling Winona program, the business class. It was a week-long program. And that's where it was Tom McDonald and Bud Haynes. And they taught me how the business is structured, how much I should be spending on my cost of goods, how much I should be spending on marketing, how much I should earmark towards, having either a brick and mortar building or working out of my house. just all of that, just how to structure my categories, or if I wanted to be working in styles, or what I wanted to do, for weddings, or senior photography, or more like sports photography, things like that. So it was all business related, and that foundation really is when I started taking all these little tools that I had learned in the toolbox that I knew how to use. I just didn't know how to use them together in harmony to create a sustainable business model. And so without PPA, I wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be near as successful. And it's not just about me. I wouldn't be able to share this gift with other people and actually successfully create products that they need and desire and want.
Well, that's amazing. Well, Greg, thanks so much for taking time out today and sharing your talents and your stories.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and I'm so glad we finally got to hook up and do this. It's been quite busy doing these discussions, and I've wanted to do this with you for a month now, and so hopefully we'll get together and have some sushi.
You got it. Yep, and I'll make sure when Skip Cohen comes to town and Sandra Pierce, Pearson will bring all of them together, and we'll have a little catch up. We'll have a little catch up party. Well, thank you so much. And I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye now.
You are listening to the InFocus Interview Show. If you like these interviews, be sure to subscribe to our weekly Photofocus podcast on photofocus.com. Thank you for joining us.